Learn how the emissions neutral buildings information exchange wins by growing collaboration in the construction industry with Andrea Linsky, team lead at ENBIX, on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And to get started, I want to ask you this question. Do you have a wins list? And do you actually track the good things that have happened in your business? If you don't, then get in touch, and I'll send you a resource to get started. If you do, then let me know if you have a way to revisit those wins and pull out the best parts so you can get more wins in the future. Because I really believe that when you can use a proven structure to reverse engineer your past wins, then you put yourself in a better position to learn and to be successful. Like Karen Unland, co-founder of Taproot Publishing, who has built on her own proven success of doing wellness check-ins with her remote work team at the beginning of every meeting. And you can learn about her approach on episode 2 of the Executive Wins Podcast. With that in mind, I hope you take a moment to start your own wins list. The first win on my list this year, well, this is the podcast that won the 2025 Best New Podcast Award in the Quill Podcasting Awards. And now I'm in the process of understanding why that happened so we can do it again. On today's episode, you'll learn how the emissions neutral buildings information exchange wins by growing collaboration in the construction industry. And that's with Andrea Linsky, team lead at ENBIX. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Executive Wins Workshop. In this high-impact workshop, executive teams learn how to reverse engineer past wins in a structured way so they can get more wins in the future. I recently taught this workshop at a conference for finance officials, and they got a lot of benefits from it. Especially when I asked this question. How many people here have a wins list? Nobody raised their hand. So then I created an opportunity for them to build their own wins list for the first time. And now they have a tool that they can use to grow themselves and celebrate wins with their teams. If you and your team want a highly interactive session to improve your leadership skills, profitability, communication, and more, then get in touch. As your instructor, I bring 25 plus years of experience and a proven system that you can learn to grow the overall results in your business. It's available in half-day, full-day, and customizable formats, and it's really good for team building and corporate retreats. There's also an in-depth version called Your Employee Wins, and this is when I interview people from all levels of a company to find out how they get their wins, and then I deliver a summary to the executive team. And because I'm not in the family, the results are real. So if you're an executive who really wants to find out how people in your company get their wins and then get analysis about whether or not those wins are actually aligned with your strategy, then visit executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Andrea Linsky, Director at the Alberta Ecotrust Foundation and Team Lead at ENBIX, which stands for the Emissions Neutral Buildings Information Exchange. ENBIX brings together government and industry to advance emissions neutral buildings in Alberta. You can learn all about their work at enbix.ca. That's enbix.ca. In this episode, you'll learn how Andrea and the team at ENBIX got the organization started, along with their ability to pull together key industry partners in the development of their overall strategy. You'll also hear about the many events and initiatives ENBIX is leading to help builders come together, find cutting-edge information, and also build the goodwill that is needed to move emissions reduction initiatives forward. I also want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win that you hear on this show. I really do hope that you can use this approach to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Andrea Linsky with her executive win. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gordon.
It's really, really good to have you here. I've had a chance to attend events that you are leading and contributing to the leadership of in so many different ways where you are doing work that will benefit my grandkids. I mean to leave that as sort of a sneaky moment here because we're about to get into some of your background. I know a lot of people, listening don't know you. So if you had to describe yourself and some of the work that you do, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Andrea Linsky. I'm the Director of Emissions Neutral Buildings at Alberta Ecotrust Foundation. And I have been working with Alberta Ecotrust for over 2 years here on multiple projects, but lots of them I'm here to talk about with you today. My background before joining Alberta Ecotrust, I actually am a chemical engineer by training out of Montreal and McGill, but I'm an Alberta girl, born and raised here, and decided after many years in British Columbia, actually working on hydrogen fuel cell technology and with some of the local polytechnic universities over there on energy management, that it was time to come back to Alberta and do some work here.
Love it. And I need to get into this because I know your enthusiasm. I know you blew through there pretty quick, and thanks for the cross Canada perspective that you bring to things. And you've been in many different organizations, so your perspective has built. I know that you've stacked and layered on so that some of those things that brought you back to Alberta through there. Alberta Ecotrust. If someone didn't understand what it was, please tell us what it is.
Sure thing. So Alberta Ecotrust is we are a charitable organization here in Alberta. We've been around for over 30 years, which is pretty exciting to know that we've been doing this work here in Alberta. We were actually brought together by big industry in Alberta, as well as the environmental nonprofits that saw that there was sort of a vision for a better environmental future for Alberta. And today, our vision is an Alberta where people and nature thrive. And we realize this vision by working with to sort of find out where the gaps are in industry, help mobilize resources to fill those gaps. We invest in our communities through grant making, and we create partnerships with lots of different entities, which is sort of goes back to our original roots, right, of these partnership between these different entities. So, and then the big piece is about building capacity as well. So supporting the rest of the industries to do the work that we see the same vision for.
It's okay, so the environment in Alberta, right, kind of gets a bad rap, right? And wait a minute, there's been this organization around for 30 years doing this good work to really make it better on all fronts. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and we've actually sort of shifted, or I should say expanded our vision over the last few years as well. We started more on the natural environment, as you might think, here in Alberta, but in the last about 10 to, I guess we're coming up on 10 years of work here, we've shifted towards looking at cities, how cities operate, and the emissions that they produce, and greenhouse gas emissions they produce, and not only the cities, but where my focus is in really the buildings within those cities. So how do you help reduce emissions in buildings in Alberta?
Why are you so So I've seen you speak at a Women of Carbon documentary event. I've seen your passion in this area, and I didn't know that buildings can breathe. If I'm saying that wrong, if technically that's actually true, I'm maybe just kidding myself with my little bit of information. What's your passion for buildings? Like, where's that from?
Yeah, it's sort of a long-rooted passion that you sort of alluded to there with my history working in the past few years. One of the things I learned really early on in my career is that there's this new concept, or I guess it's an older concept, around demand side management. So it's like, let's talk about the energy that we're using on the use side, the building side, or it might be in a vehicle or something along those lines, not just renewables as a solution to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And I found that really tangible and viable when I started my work, because it was something, well, we know how to build buildings. Let's look at techniques or methods to try and make them more efficient when we're first building them, or if we need to retrofit them, how can we do that to make things better, reduce the energy and the emissions associated with it. And so I've had this slowly growing career of doing it in nonprofit housing associations, working on campuses to actually reduce emissions on campuses. And then I worked for quite a while with the city of Edmonton as well to look at their overall building portfolio and look at ways that we could reduce emissions in the city's own infrastructure. And it's interesting because every building has a different story. Every building is built a little differently. They're all designed differently. Architects will tell you the same thing, right? And so there's a lot of different ways and creativity that can be put into figuring out how to reduce emissions, but it's also not so complicated. Like there's sort of the systematic same things that you need to look at every single time. So it's something that I find really interesting to be able to sort of problem solve, I guess you could say, as you go through everything.
I thank you for that description. Now I'm going to think of buildings as snowflakes because everyone is just individually unique, and you have a passion for the snowflake, but making a better snowflake in a sense that meets this theme of sustainability that we heard with Ecotrust because you've landed. And the neat thing about your work is you could work anywhere, but you're here working at the Ecotrust in Alberta.
Yes.
How come?
Yeah, so that is also a fun story bringing me back from British Columbia. I actually was part of working on a bunch of different initiatives in British Columbia that are not unlike the work that I'm doing now with Alberta Ecotrust. One of those situations was ZEEC, or the Zero Emissions Building Center, in British Columbia, and they had a program where they were starting to build capacity and share knowledge with the building industry on how can we start to build differently than we've been building in the past. And I left British Columbia, come back here, raise my family, and thought, it would be really lovely to see something like this in Alberta. And so I spent probably about 5 or 6 years working at the city of Edmonton, really learning a lot about the landscape here and how things work and how our utility systems work, which are super complex, especially compared to British Columbia, how the building industry works a little bit, how we have different climate here that we have to work with, obviously, compared to British Columbia, which is a lot more temperate and warm, and they don't need nearly as much insulation as we need for a lot of things. And so got to know that, and then thought to myself, I would really love to be part of building this thing, the similar types of entities here in Alberta. And it just so happened that at about the same time, the cities of Edmonton and Calgary themselves had been thinking about something similar. And so they'd set aside some funding to be able to do the type of work related to building capacity in buildings. And Alberta Ecotrust stepped up as an external third-party entity that would lead some of this work in the province and bringing together industry and trying to create this entity. And so I was lucky to be able to come on board here at Alberta Ecotrust and work with a fantastic team to do that.
How lucky I get to meet so many interesting leaders. It takes forever to pack up all that knowledge into your brain. Do you know what I mean? So you're the right leader at the right time in the right province, in the right entity to exponentially grow this opportunity. And again, I've seen you in action. I've seen you inspire an audience. I've seen you coordinate events that help, bring all those stakeholders together to spread the good word, get the communication out and do those things. I mean, it probably leads us into really kicking off the conversation here to say, if you had to describe your biggest win in this work in the last few years, what would that win be and how would you describe it?
Yes. So my biggest win is ENBIX, or the Emissions Neutral Building Information Exchange. It is a program that Alberta Ecotrust runs. And it is the entity that I was hired originally to stand up and get moving here at Alberta Ecotrust. And as I told my supervisors, the leadership team at Alberta Ecotrust, this is something I've been dreaming about for a long time, and they were pretty excited to be able to hire someone that's been thinking about this for longer than they had in some cases. So it was personal excitement for me just to be able to come and do this. I think that the true win behind setting up ENBIX, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what it is as we go here, but the true win behind setting it up is that industry sees value in it. And we're starting to hear from industry saying, hey, this is something that I really want to be involved in, and that I think that you can help me in the journey towards producing emissions neutral buildings in Alberta.
The industry sees value in it, but if I'm a big builder, I just want to hammer those buildings up, make lots of money. So, what message are you getting from industry that goes in contradiction to that?
I would say that that's not all they're thinking about, Gord. There's absolutely desire in the industry, as there are in individuals and personal lives, to figure out how to reduce energy and emissions associated with what we're building here. We know that we've got some um, hard things to do. And buildings, you produce between 50 and 60% of the emissions in Edmonton and Calgary. And so we've got to figure out how to decarbonize those, or how to reduce the energy and emissions, not only in their operations and the way that they, like what the heating and cooling of the buildings, but also in the materials that we're using to build those buildings. And so what we're hearing from the industry is, we know we have to do this. We know we need to get there eventually. There is some building code expectations coming down from federal levels. There's federal goals that are being set, and even provincial goals at 2050 to try and hit these targets. And so they know it's coming. They're on board, usually corporately, as just a important point for them to be able to get to. And so they're looking to get our help on how to get there. And in some cases, they're leading. And so we're working with them to gather their knowledge and share it back out with individuals as well.
Thanks for holding them up. There's a lot of good actors in this situation. And I'm certainly meant to throw out the controversial question to say, wow, there's leadership coming from many different pockets of all the stakeholder group here, and you just happen to be at the hub of so much of it. We got lucky. James Kierstead from Levin was on. They produce wireless light switches, which is like, it sounds easy. We put a key fob in there, have a central hub, no wires in the walls. It's great. Took them 7 years from 2015 to 2022 to wait for regulations to break in Canada and the United States to be viable. So when I think about someone at the leading edge of getting regulations looked at, sharing information, getting things to move around, a company like James's company would benefit from, and he's just one little piece of that puzzle that's helping to make, in that case, they're getting less wires in the walls as sort of one way to evolve the building industry. And I don't mean to comment, I'm not an expert in that area, to say whether that's the right thing or not. I'm just saying that's an evolution that's happening along the way. So let's just boil it down to see if we can get maybe one or two sentences for the win so that we're really clear on what it is. Go ahead.
So my win is launching and seeing ENBIX, the Emissions Neutral Building Information Exchange, hosted by Alberta Ecotrust, succeed and have industry really grab a hold of it and take it where it needs to go.
Thanks for pulling that together. And launching is a daunting thing because it's not instantly there, right? You're making things up in a sense by getting this entity to start. Always like to jump into the anatomy of a win. Then we kind of know what the win is. So what's the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind the win? Strategically, why stand this thing up? Like, what was the sort of vision, the mission, in a sense, the goals? What would you say strategically a highlight would be?
Yeah, so the strategy was a really interesting piece for us. It came from a lot of different places. So this wasn't, I would never say this was sort of unique or a new concept. The initial impetus came, as I mentioned, from the cities of Edmonton and Calgary. They knew that the industry would need support in meeting higher levels of building code if and when they're adopted here in Alberta. And they knew that they couldn't necessarily be the groups to do that. It needed to be sort of an industry-led initiative that's where people turn to each other for support in moving these things forward. So they put it in their climate strategies, as well as making sure that there is some funding initially set aside to help us launch everything. When we started moving into this work, partnered with a few really key industry players. One is the Smart Sustainable Resilient Infrastructure Association, based out of Alberta, that supports sort of innovation in this realm, as well as some key industry players like the Calgary Construction Association, who've been leading charge forward in this work for quite some time. And we knew that we had to we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. This is something that exists in Vancouver, as I've already mentioned. The New York Energy Exchange is another great example of this. There's quite a few in Europe as well as and Washington. So we did our research. We went out, we looked at what was already existing. We pulled from those the different models because they're all kind of unique, right? Each jurisdiction has different barriers that they're running into and trying to meet these higher performance goals. So how are they going to be able to do that? Like, how do they support the industry getting through them? Will result in different programming and different offerings. We pulled that all together. And then we said, we're not going to be able to make this decision. We shouldn't make this decision. The decision on what the strategy is on how we move forward needs to come from industry. So we ran a series of industry-focused workshops across Edmonton and Calgary to really pull from them and say, hey, here's what's available. Here's what we could do. Here's where we think, based on our experience, that we should go. But is this actually something valuable to you? And that led to the development of something we call Shaping the Exchange, which was a great report that's available on our ENBIX website that sort of shows where the barriers are, what people think they need support in doing here in Alberta, what's unique about Alberta, and what are sort of the guiding framework for how this organization needs to be set up. One of the things that they made really clear is that our goal is to accelerate building and renovation practices that lead to emissions neutral built environments in Alberta for both new and existing buildings and all types of buildings. So we've got these really sort of big goal of let's just improve the buildings, right? As you could say. And we do that a lot of different ways. They helped us figure that out as well when we were developing this strategy. We share knowledge or help others share knowledge. We foster innovation and leadership in the sector. Sometimes we're leading, sometimes others are leading, and we're helping. We're strengthening collaboration. So sometimes we bring people into a room that might not necessarily always be in the same room. A good example of that is we work regularly with the construction associations across Alberta, as well as the different build entities, which represent residential builders, and the construction associations are the commercial builders. So let's bring them together. Let's talk about topics that they might not usually talk about because they work in such sort of unique realms. And then we also set out these guiding principles. And the guiding principles were really important because industry said, like, if you're not going to follow these guiding principles, we're not really that interested in being part of what you're doing. And so that was really helpful for me as a leader in the first year whenever we had new ideas coming to us about what we should be offering or how we should be doing things. I can say, is it in line with our guiding principles? And if it's not, then it's not a good fit for us. We have tons of partners. Let's go find one of them and see if they can take on this piece of initiative or work. But it's not something that will resonate well with the industry that we're working with.
Thank you for that detailed, well-prepared description of maybe one of the best strategic planning processes that I've ever heard. The typical strategic planning process throws like a few people in a room and they just sort of bang out something. And then in your case, the temptation would be, especially with the entity that you're setting up, going, well, here's how we're doing things, and then going out. But this patience to get the iterative buy-in over time, how powerful has that been for the buy-in process? That would have just given you a chance not only to network with people, but actually to get their input that they would feel that they're contributing to moving it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been extremely important, not only for pulling together the actual work that we're doing, but also our key funding stakeholders need to know that this is actually hitting the audience that they wanted to hit, right? And so working with any of our funders saying, well, here's what we've been told by industry. So that's what we're going to do. If you want us to do something else, like, we can have a discussion with industry about whether or not I think that that's of value. But it's really sort of helped us not only pull in the right industry people and say, hey, you were at the table. You said you wanted to do this. Let's have some discussions about doing this together. But also sort of show value to the funding streams that are coming in as well.
Fantastic. I mean, anytime we have a strategy, I go to the second step and say, well, we need a work plan. There was a moment when ENBIX there wasn't a fancy acronym. It was an idea. It was a little thing. So there's sort of a first moment when that starts to incubate. And then we get to this moment in time. Well, how would you describe the total timeline, like in months or years, and maybe some highlights in that sort of work plan along the way?
Yeah, the work plan was one of those, like, you had to figure it out pretty quickly, in part because a big part of our platform is our website. So enbix.ca is where we host a lot of the content. We work across Alberta. We've pulled in funding streams from additional places to allow us to do that. And so we need to have this central platform where anyone can get to it, and it doesn't have to be in person. And when we were setting up the website, we knew we had to have sort of key things that we were offering to industry to meet the goals that we had set out during our strategic planning. And so these are things like a central website where anyone can come in to list the events that they're going to have anywhere in the province. And so now, if you were looking for anything related to emissions neutral buildings training in Alberta or capacity building, we want to be the hub, like the one place that you come and you'll find what you're looking for. We've got a resource page, which is really important, where we're pulling resources that we're making from comments from industry saying, hey, I don't know if this would work in Alberta. Can you do some research for us? And we go out, do some research, write up a report and publish it. Or we're pulling from existing stuff across the whole world. If it's relevant in our climate zone or in our current utility setup or whatever it happens to be, we're making sure that that information is available. So what we needed to do is set up this framework, the website, and the background behind it. We have a ton of events that we host, not just other people's events, with these sort of key pieces of lines of work that we're focusing on. And once we had those set up in our work plan, it allowed us to go back to industry. So we had that framework set up. We could go back to industry and say, okay, so are we hitting things correctly? Are we getting the information you need out to you? Is the way that we're disseminating the information resonating with you? Do you want shorter events, longer events? Should we be feeding you lunch? All of these bits and pieces as we sort of go through everything. And it allows us to do what we've shifted to in the last year now. The first year was testing out all sorts of different things. This last year, we've got these 4 core values, or not values, but 4 core focus areas, I should say, that we do each year, and we reevaluate each year. What are we going to focus on this upcoming year? But we still have that framework of what we offer, how we offer it, how we engage with different players. But each year we can sort of morph those focus areas depending on what industry is asking for.
Fantastic. So you can see it's an idea. You start to talk to people, but you say, no, we're going to actually bring you. We want you to help us fill in the strategic plan, and then somewhere in there you need a hub, and you got to. That doesn't happen in a day. What you've just described, and I think I remember talking in an earlier conversation. There are like curated articles from Northern Europe. You know what I mean? Where you folks have gone in and taken the time to actually point people to the few paragraphs or whatever it is that they need that are relevant, as opposed to having to sort of comb through type. That's the level of care that's going into the resources that you're providing for people here in this jurisdiction. I think that's fantastic. Got that website up and running. That's a huge highlight, obviously, in the work plan along the way. I hear a couple years in play with many more years to come. I think if that work plan, it'd be fun to sort of see that future part of the whiteboard get sort of worked out. Strategy and work plan, you've described them well, which is super fun. Gets us on to people. And I always like to say, well, who are the key? If you have a win, you need, sort of key people along with their, maybe a description of their attitudes. Mm-hmm. We've heard a little bit about you and your enthusiasm as sort of one of the key players in this. How would you describe your attitude through the process? Was it like, this is going to be simple, every day's easy? Like, how does that work as you sort of got going and where you are now?
Yeah, no, I think my attitude towards this has always been really optimistic. I think in general, I'm an optimistic person, and so even when things get challenging, I've found it sort of as a growing opportunity to learn. One of the things we've done over the last few years in standing this up is also growing a team, right? And so for Alberta Ecotrust, we've grown quite a bit over the last 5-10 years here, almost doubling in size every year for the last few years. So I think, for me, it's been I've been really lucky to be involved in a leadership team that's really compassionate, but also strong and focused and able to say, okay, we're growing. Let's figure out how to prepare for this. Let's make sure that we're doing things that will help our team grow and help Alberta Ecotrust succeed in this massive boom that we're going through. So we've been sort of working through that as a team, which has been really interesting. And it's allowed us to make sure that the teams that we're building at Alberta Ecotrust and in the buildings team and ENBIX are really strong and bring a lot of really great skill sets and talent, so that we can be seen as experts as well as supporting experts, which I think is a really interesting thing to do.
Yeah, and I've been at some of your events, and it's funny, you walk up to somebody and you think they're maybe, just sort of helping out, put out the muffins or whatever, and then suddenly you're deep into their history and background, and they've got all this experience coming from industry, because they're, I'm seeing them front facing it for 1 minute in time, and in fact they've got that depth. So it'd be fun to actually pull out all the resumes and see the gang that, the superhero team that you've put together at the Justice League or whatever you want to call it, and made that happen. And then there's some, I just mean to mention, because we've talked about a few of the other stakeholders along the way, there's been some strong industry players too, and it'd be great to hear. Maybe you can mention by name, or you can, whatever you need to do. But tell us about some of these industry players that have been key players, and again, their attitudes to making this win occur.
Yeah, so our industry partners have supported us in a lot of different ways. So I mentioned the ones that helped us sort of kick things off. We have our cities and Bill Black at the Calgary Construction Association, and Pam Gertzen from SRIA, or the Smart Sustainable Resilient Infrastructure Association. They've been heavily involved all the way through. We actually have an advisory group. So when we said we wanted to be industry-led, we meant it. And so we've got this group of industry leaders who are supporting and advising us on the work that we're doing. That includes lots of different groups. The construction associations I mentioned, members from Build, like the residential building associations. We've got large construction association leads like Jen Hancock at Shandos. And then we've got groups like BOMA and the cities, some of the larger builders like Brookfield Residential. And then we've also got post-secondaries like SAIT and engineering firms, architecture firms. So we've got a really, like, all of the different groups that we know we need to engage with. We keep actively going out to make sure that our advisory group is comprised of all the groups we're trying to touch. And I think, they're the ones that know our, work plans. They know what we're up to on a day-to-day basis, I would say, or maybe not day-to-day, but at least month to month for sure. But they're just sort of a doorway in, I would say, to a lot of the strong partnerships that we're building in industry, which I think it goes back to one of our guiding principles that we had, is about see what's out there already. Figure out who's doing this, figure out how you engage with them and how you support them if they need the support. And so that's been a big part of what we've done. We have a fantastic partnership with the Carbon Leadership Forum of Alberta, which is an entity that was started out of sort of a hub model out of Washington, and they focus on embodied carbon in buildings, or the carbon associated with the construction materials that you're building with. And in Alberta, there is a great group of volunteers running CLF, the Carbon Leadership Forum, but they just didn't have the resources to really do what they needed to do as a volunteer-based organization. So we said, okay, well, can we fund you? Can we support you? We've got team members that are doing this work. We've heard from industry, we need to focus on this. We're not going to reinvent a new CLF. We'd rather work with you. So we have a formal partnership with them to do the work that they're doing. Similarly with SRIA and Pam, she's a innovation focused. So anytime innovation related work comes through, we say, let's go talk with our partner organizations, SRIA. We partner a lot with the building associations, as I mentioned, because they're the ones that actually talk every day to the builders. They understand what's going on. They know what their needs are. They have great connections with them. We've been really lucky to go to some of these builders' breakfasts where they feed them a nice meal before they go out to site, and we bring our wall assemblies, these mock-up wall assemblies that we've been carrying around in our trailer. We let them come and touch them and ask questions about why they would put the air barrier here instead of there in these different assemblies that we've built that show about how to build to the high performance buildings. So without those partnerships, we wouldn't have access to those builders, right? We wouldn't have access to the people that we're really trying to work with. So I think that's a really important part. It wouldn't be possible without all these other people that we're working with.
I love the thoroughness in every, I can't hit you with a question where you don't know, because you've taken the time to do the work. That long process of strategic planning, that long process of assembling the right people from all these different places, it just speaks so well to the success you've had to this point, and just massively to the exponential success is coming your way as all these, as you layer on based on the guiding principles that you have in your areas of focus. This is so interesting. Anytime we have a win, the fourth step is operationally, and we need to get things in place. We heard a lot about your website. Now we know you've got demonstration walls that you run around the province to show off to builders, and that's sort of an operational thing to do. Any other operational highlights that you'd like to point out in terms of getting this win to occur?
Um, you know, um, one of the sort of shifts I think in the last few months here is now that we've got these really strong relationships with builders and we're starting to ask them, what could we help with? Our operations on the resource side are starting to shift a little, where it's not just us compiling stuff that's happening elsewhere. We're saying, oh, you 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 actually are missing something to be able to do your work effectively in Alberta. And so we've been doing things like designing new tools in partnership with web-based developers, parametric modeling tools, we call them, where we're able to actually show builders, if I switch out this window type, a triple pane window with a double pane window when I'm doing a project, what kind of impact is that going to make on my final energy and emissions results? And it's a tool where they can just play around with those things without having to pay someone to do energy modeling for them, without having to spend hours rendering new models every single time, just to give them the ability to start having those high level conversations up front. So I think that the ability to sort of shift in the operations to provide those more direct resources are a really important one for our team. I also, on my side, I do a lot of work on continuing our operations, which is an important part. We're a charity, so all of our funding comes from elsewhere. All of the work that we've been doing for the work at ENBIX is free or very low cost to entry, just to recoup some costs of food, for instance, to be able to run events. But as an organization, we also have to have a charitable mindset, which means every time we're walking and talking with other entities, we have to look for pathways to continue to bring in the funding to be able to do our work. So it's almost like you're working as an entrepreneur, but for everyone, for the betterment of everyone, as charities usually are set up. And so I do a lot of thinking about, well, how could I as I continue to work with these industry folks, how do I show them enough value that they can start donating to us to be able to continue to do this work across the province? And so that's a big piece. Our fundraising needs never end to be able to continue our work.
I think that's my T-shirt, entrepreneur for everyone. I think that's what I'm going to get there. And you can hear so many good things, again, thoughtfully going into the operation. And where's the puck going? Oh, the builders need to be able to imagine what this is like. So we're going to get those tools in their hands. We're going to get the conversations in their hands. We're going to put the events in their hands. We're going to make them touch it and feel it and see it. Just how wonderful. And you can see why this win is occurring. But wow, does it ever take a lot of work on you and your team's part? And I'm sure everybody at the advisory level to make this occur. Finally, final steps. So we said strategy, work plan, people, operations. We get into results, quantitative and qualitative. I don't know which one you want to tackle first. Maybe quantitative, if you need to give us some numbers on the numbers game, and then we'll talk about the qualitative part if that helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a very busy few years. We've had, one of the things I think we're really excited about is we've been able to get out on the road, as I mentioned, with the trailer and the wall assemblies. So we've run 19 training sessions in like different jurisdictions across Alberta in 7 different cities. And that's formal training, not just workshops, with 500 professionals. At those formal ones, we've hosted 115 events with over 3,000 professionals at them. And one of my favorite numbers is the number of one-on-one meetings we've had with people just to talk about what we've been doing. And in the first year, it was around 250, 300 people that we talked to. And in the first year, 2 years of doing this now, we're almost at 500 individual conversations with people, just to let them know what we're doing. Because one of the things I've found is that, it's really about those relationships, the people that we've talked, and we need to make sure they know what we're doing. And often they're like, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "Well, we're a charity. This is something we're focused on from a goal to do something about these buildings, right?" And then there's the conversation changes a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, interesting. You're not here to sell me something. We're here to talk about how to get there as a province." So it's pretty exciting.
I love it. You're reminding me even of the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, a nonprofit that's out there to help a lot of folks switch into the AI world as they kind of do that. They've got to do a lot of education, similarly in the way that you're talking about doing that now. Those are great numbers. You're reaching so many people. The one-on-ones. So you drink a lot of coffee. You know what I mean? Like, right? You're right.
Well, in the world of Zoom, it's a lot of Zoom time. Not as much coffee, but yeah, it's been really great to sort of connect with people. And I think my two favorite sort of personal reflections on knowing that we're getting where we need to go was when we had a bunch of large residential builders come to us and say, we're running into barriers to doing higher performance construction in Alberta. From a multitude of different angles. We would really love it if you could help us bring together, the top 5 builders in each of the big cities, unpack those barriers, figure out where they're coming from, share that information with the people who can help us remove it, maybe host some workshops with those individuals. And when they came to us asking us to do that, I knew we'd hit that win, right? Of being able to say ENBIX is doing what it's supposed to do. It's supporting industry and getting to these higher performance buildings. And the other good one that I really enjoyed was I used to say, I will know that ENBIX has done what it needs to do when I sit down or meet someone who says to me, "Hey, have you ever heard of ENBIX? This is a really neat idea," and someone I've never met before. And it finally happened about half a year ago when I went out for coffee with an architect from Calgary, and that was a real coffee in that case. And and she was like, "Oh yeah, you're doing some really interesting work. Have you ever heard of ENBIX?" And I was like, "Yes." So it was that was my win. It was fantastic.
Well, it's you can hear the joy that you have for it. You can hear the joy that everybody that you've described has for it as well, and you can hear the mission-driven part. Right? It's one thing to be 30 years in Alberta, adjust the organization, support the ENBIX momentum, and be on trend for an absolutely needed trend as your piece of the puzzle taking us all forward, certainly in Alberta, and then the global influence that you're going to have along the way. Wow, it'd be neat to talk to you in a couple of years because, you've got your cool software now and you got your great website, and there's going to be even more, I'm sure, as you layer on and add on to making these things happen. And you've been winning the hearts and minds as a trusted place to go. If I've got some barriers, I'm going to go to you first. So it takes a while to earn that trust and be that one that sort of folks can go to. Well, Andrea, if people need to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Our website has a ton of information on how you can get involved with ENBIX or even get a hold of our team. So that's ENBIX, ENBIX.ca. And you can get lost for hours in there if you're like me. So enjoy.
Well, I've been out to some of your events. I think they're terrific. I can't recommend it enough. Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Gord.
Bring key industry players together. Listen and execute a vision and strategy that not only satisfies your founding partners, but also leads the way in Alberta's emissions-free building well into the future. That is how Andrea Linsky, her team, and all ENBIX stakeholders win every day. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing your inspiring win. Now, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our upcoming episodes, which include how to support globally mobile leaders and their families with data-driven results. Winning with Karina Lagarigue, psychologist and advisor to globally mobile high performers. And if you are a leader who wants to learn how the Executive Wins coaching session can help you to grow your confidence and inspire your team, then visit executivewins.com to learn how. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins monthly newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.